I really delighted that we could do this. Clearly, when we first planned these sessions, we weren't expecting to be doing it on Teams or working from home. But in fact, we can welcome more of you than we probably could have done in our bar, which is where we normally have them. I'm delighted today to introduce our three panelists. Kate Rawlinson, who is my CEO. She was previously our EMEA Head of New Business and Marketing and Managing Director of EMEA and Global MD of Hubs. She and I actually started working together at the tail end of the last century. She then left for a bit, went to Cara, but came back to the fold in 2011. Catherine Jacob is CEO of Pearl & Dean. Catherine Jacob OBE, I should say, is CEO of Pearl & Dean and my co-author for the Glass Wall book, and also our new book, which we hope to talk to you about very soon. Watch this space, coming out in October. Catherine has had a very diverse set of careers in that she's worked in, I think, nearly every media channel. So perhaps she'll talk about that a bit, about some of her jobs previously. And SJ Sarah is MD of Saatchi's, took the role in December, and was before this, she was CMO at Grey. And clearly, just as with Kate kind of new into the role in the autumn of 2019, and SJ new into the role really just before Christmas, the plans for 2020 have not exactly gone as expected. And we'll get onto this, I'm sure. Now, I'll set up this session just by quoting something that Eleanor Roosevelt once said, which is that women are like tea bags. You have no idea how strong they are until they get into hot water. And I will also quote one of my favourite Glasswall book endorsers, Diane von Furstenberg, who says, "There is no such thing as a woman who is not strong. I have never come across one." So I will say that all of our strength is being tested at the moment. And normally I might have asked you to think of a difficult time in your career, but for all of us at the moment, that is clearly now. So I'm going to now ask you each in turn, how are you feeling about the current crisis? And actually, frankly, how are you dealing with it? And can I start with you, Kate?
Yes, you can. Thanks, Sue. Well, I mean, you know, I think overall it's hard not to feel deeply saddened by what's happening. The impact, I think the thing that amazes me is in such a short space of time, the impact of this has been devastating for so many people in the country and, of course, around the world. You know, people are losing their lives, people are losing their jobs. And many people are deeply, deeply anxious. And it's amazing to think that how quickly this has happened. And I think I feel really bad. I feel for kids, actually. I mean, like many of you out there listening, you know, my kids who are 12 and 10 are off school at home. And I'm sure for a child, it's very bewildering, actually, what's going on. It's bad enough for us adults. You know, they're missing their friends, they're missing the structure of school. I feel like I'm failing most days as a teacher because I'm finding it really hard to manage my job alongside schooling the kids. But, you know, they're just trying to make sense of it, I think. And I really feel for them. They've had their routine completely disrupted. So I think on a human level, I feel really sad about what's happening. And I think we're all desperate to get back to normal, obviously. And I think that one of the most challenging things is the uncertainty. So when will things get back to normal? When will I be able to go into the office on holiday? When can my kids go back to school? Please, God, after the half term. You know, when can I see my friends, my parents? So, you know, I think on a personal human level, it's really, really sad. And of course, then you've got the economic impact of all of this, which is going to be significant. And again, we don't know. And as you know, Sue, you know, we've been talking a lot to our China colleagues because they're kind of ahead in the process. So it's useful for us to understand what's going on in China. And I think what we're hearing is that, you know, the people in Wuhan, particularly, despite being released from many of the lockdown restrictions now, are more concerned than ever about contracting the virus. And they're not venturing out in the same way that they were previously. And the economic impact, therefore, will be felt, you know, significantly and for some time. And you know, some of you may have seen The Economist this week, which talks about the 90% economy. So, you know, double-digit declines in economies across the world. So, you know, it's deeply troubling, this whole experience for all of us. But that being said, I think alongside that obvious, you know, negative, terrible situation, there are a lot of positives. So I think it's probably worth touching on a couple of those for us. I mean, I think, you know, just from a business perspective, we're seeing incredible innovation, you know, and I think Mark Reed has spoken about this quite a lot, but the fact that we're doing, you know, what would normally take us, you know, half a year to solve, we're cracking things in, you know, a fraction of the time that it would normally take us to address certain things. You know, we've adapted. So like many of you, we pretty much, as Mediacom UK, 1,500 people in the UK, we were working in the office one day and the next day we were all working at home. And we kind of managed to do that pretty successfully and continue to service our clients and continue to operate. Amazing. You know, and this technology, what we're seeing here, you know, these people in boxes on a computer screen is now just normal for us. And I think we're seeing, and I know that we've got some clients on the call, and I'd love to hear their opinions. But you know, it seems to me that we're deepening our client relationships at this time. You know, we've initiated quite a lot of things within Mediacom very quickly. You know, we update our clients 3 times a week now with relevant COVID updates, be that around consumer trends, opportunities and value in the media marketplace, updates from other markets, that kind of thing. And it's just been, you know, amazing how quickly we've been able to do that. And the feedback that we're getting is very positive. We're also doing, well, we're doing things like this, but we do a series of events, usually about 4 or 5 across the year. We have client dinners where we invite many of our senior clients to a dinner and we all get together. They're usually brilliant. And obviously we haven't been able to do that in a restaurant, but we've been doing hangouts. And you've been involved in those as well, Sue. And again, I just think they've been really successful. Clients have really enjoyed hearing from other clients. So, you know, in and amongst all of that, the awful stuff that we're hearing and reading about and the impacts on our businesses and the economy, there's some really positive stuff going on as well. And I think behaviours that we learn now, I hope that we will continue with as we move forward, really. So I suppose that's a summary of how I feel about it.
And it's very mixed. Catherine, is that where you are as well, or?
Yeah, I think it is. I think you have days where you feel energized and excited, and I've almost certainly had a couple of times where I've just thought, God, you know, this is never ending, and I think I'd rather just sit in my bedroom and read a old Jilly Cooper and just let the world run by for 2 days, you know, because it's just kind of all too much. And I think I think if you are unduly pessimistic at this time, then you're missing out on something, because actually there are good things that come out. Then I think if you're incredibly optimistic, you're slightly deluded. And I think the thing that I've learnt is the power of relationships with both internally. So almost certainly when I've been feeling a bit meh, and Jilly Cooper novels has felt like my only way out, I can phone colleagues within Pearl and Dean. I know I've spoken to you, Sue, I've spoken to lots of other people, and I think it is that thing where, ironically, the thing about this is it's all the same for all of us. It's not like you're on your own. So you can generally ring people up and go, God, this is a bit shit, isn't it? You know, and everyone's going, yes. And other media owners as well, kind of supporting each other as well, coming up with ideas, doing things together. I think that the speed of doing things is much quicker, actually, because we're not all trekking to various places. We're all in one place, and you can make meetings much more effective because people can only do these type of meetings probably for an hour and a bit tops, because it's weird. It's very emotionally, it's quite strange because you're not with people. and some of the nuances are missed and the timings are a bit weird. So I think it's about innovation. I think it's about relationships. And I think we will go back to a different world. But I think all the things that are really important for really great values and cultures, which are people and values and direction of travel, they will, you know, maybe be buffeted a bit during the next kind of difficult time, but it will see you in really, really great stead. And I think those organisations that have been built on lip service and not staying true to yourself and having values, they'll be the people who have difficulty.
SJ.
Yeah, gosh.
How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Absolutely echoing everything that the guys have just said. I think it's true for everyone, not just leaders. It is a time where we're being definitely tested. We're discombobulated. It's dark times. There's lots of crazy going on, and you just think about it. A global pandemic as serious as this one in itself is incredible, and then lockdown as well, and the worries around the recession. Like all three things happening at once. It's actually extraordinary that we're able to process it and navigate it. So I'm feeling tested, but I'm also feeling very proud actually of what I'm seeing the agency crew doing and how they're managing to navigate it all. I'm also being very honest with myself that this is a time of genuine craziness and not expecting to be able to fix everything or solve everything. So I guess, yeah, there's definitely a level of honesty going on. I think being an account person, being a suit, I'm also a control freak. So the level of uncertainty is also blowing my mind because I can't control my way out of this, or certainly not to the extent that I'd like to. So doing what I can do to stay in control is important and has been a bit of a safety net. So I'm being really clear with myself on priorities, like my family's health and the agency's health is the number one. It's the genuine number one priority, and like being able to prioritize that and go, everyone's safe and everyone's well, sort of keeps me calm. I'm definitely, I've got certain totems. So having my inbox in control, which it isn't very often, but that moment of clearing my inbox is a moment where I'm like, I'm on top of things. So there are definite totems in my life at the moment, which is helping. And yeah, I think Catherine's just mentioned like the importance of having a crew around me that I can lean on, and also who are leaning on me actually has given me a little bit of normality and keeping me sane and keeping me laughing and allowing me to be very honest. So I guess in this craziness and uncertainty, it is the being able to prioritize the things that matter, even if they're the very bottom of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Having a few totems that make me feel in control and being surrounded by some very good and kind people is sort of keeping me going and powering me up. And also the momentum from the agency crew has been, it's just been insane considering what they've all been dealing with. And again, I think one of the guys just mentioned it, it's the speed in which people pivoted to being in lockdown and working from home. And then the speed of thinking, or the quality of the thinking that's come out from working at home, and the quality of the craft. And yeah, I'm genuine. I am absolutely overwhelmed by how brilliant everyone has been, and our agency partners as well. And we're very lucky getting to work with MediaCom, with Direct Line. So I'm feeling very proud and very responsible right now because of what everyone around me is doing and how brilliantly they are operating.
So it's a very testing time. I'm gonna go right back round the other way. So I'll start with you, SJ. Okay. But what I wanted to kind of probe is if there's any points in your life, in your career, in your childhood, your teenage years, where you felt, obviously there wasn't a coronavirus worldwide pandemic, but where on any level you felt similarly tested, and that's somehow where your resilience, you know, in the sense that a broken bone is stronger, that you were kind of perhaps near breaking, and then you had to step change your resilience, and that's standing you in good stead now.
Yeah, I think those of us of a certain age will remember the financial recession from 2008, 2009, and I think when you felt something similar, when you felt that economy contracts in a similar way, everything becomes a lot easier to process because you've been through it once, and you know we do get through the other side, and things aren't as extraordinary and as dark as we perhaps feel now once we're in the bubble. But so the last financial recession, 2008, 2009, again, I just started a new job. But I was also having a really tough time, really tough time. I was being undermined. I guess I was being bullied, or that's a very strong word, but I was being bullied and being undermined, and I felt like I couldn't leave because I wouldn't get another job. Everything felt very small and very tight. So I did what I'd always done in my life, which was I just got my head down and worked really hard. That was my way of dealing, which was a very dark and certain time of my life. Worked really like way too hard, probably would have been making myself ill. And I think one of my big learnings from that is working harder is not the right or healthy way to get through things. And instead I should have probably attacked the problem in a way. And also just, it's great now looking back, you're never as stuck as you think you are. It's never as dark as it feels. There are chinks of light, and sometimes it's a case of just stepping back or talking to someone or being honest, and that working with other people, sometimes that is the way through it. But it was a really crazy, horrible year, but I learned loads. I became, I'm sure, a much better manager, having experience being on the other side of bad management. And I guess I actually feel blessed that I've experienced nothing like what we're experiencing now, but having experienced the world turn on its head, both with work and the economy at the same time. So resilience is definitely a muscle, and it's definitely a muscle that's got memory. And I think the more of this crazy we work through, the stronger we're going to become. And as awful as this is, I am genuinely excited at the generation that's going to come through as a result of this, particularly the 20-somethings and the 30-somethings who are already, I think, outweighing my generation in terms of what they bring to the party. So I hate the fact people are experiencing it, but I know we're going to have an incredible generation coming through.
Tatra, taking you back to a previous time,
to a previous existence. Well, in a long time ago, in a galaxy far away, as they would say in Star Wars, of which it was May the 4th yesterday, so we have to do a film reference. I worked at Virgin Radio under Chris Evans, and it was an amazing place to work. And it is the only media owner I've ever worked at where people used to go, how much money do I have to spend to get my client into the TFI bar? Which is remarkable. I look back now and I think I was so stupid. I could have made so much more money. And it was great, and it was very exciting. And then the relationship turned. We sold the company to a bigger media, a publicly quoted company, and he didn't take well to being in a PLC. And we had a much publicised falling out with him. You know, so the whole thing where you go to work in the morning and there's photographers outside seeing if he's turned up for work, people phoning up the sales team pretending to be from MediaCom, which we knew they weren't, you know, and saying, oh, is Chris in? And when you were expecting him back, and you knew it wasn't people from MediaCom because they didn't know anybody's, you know, it was just bizarre. And we ended up going to the High Court on a trial, and I've never experienced anything like it, because they took all of our diaries and every bit of paperwork and every email that you've written in the past 4 years, and you're expected to remember the contents of it.
Wow.
And you have to explain every reference and what you've said and everything you've written, and it was just mind-blowing. And that whole thing of having to give evidence in the High Court and being convinced that I used to wake up at night thinking I'm going to be the one that says the thing he was suing us for 11 million quid and we were suing him for 18 million. I mean, it was just, and I was convinced I was going to forget something. So if someone said to me, you know, so when you sent the email to Kate at MediaCom saying da 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 da, me going, what? I don't remember that. What? I don't remember. No. And it was really, really scary. And the thing about being on your own in the dock, you can't, you know, it's not like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And I think that was really scary. But then post that, I thought, well, Christ, if I've got through that, then, and we won the case. And I was again surrounded by really brilliant people who supported me, and you felt you were part of a team. And it was just such a weird existence for like 5 weeks just getting up, going to work, going and sitting in court for 5 days, standing up when the judge came in. So, you know, all of that, not knowing when you're going to be called because you don't know how many other, it was just strange. And it taught me a lot of things. It taught me that you are only as strong as, you know, a lot of things about you're only as strong as the people around you, the value of teamwork, and the fact that, you know, I was never going to remember every email I'd sent in the previous 4 years. So just remember what your story is and what your version of the story is and stick to it.
And the result of the court case, Catherine?
We won.
Yeah.
Kate, can I take you back to a previous time when your resilience has been tested and how you got through it?
Yes, I mean, you mentioned actually, Sue, my journey with MediaCom, because I worked for MediaCom in the late 90s with you and a bunch of other people who are still here. And I came back 9 years ago, and I think that's the story I want to tell. So at the time I was on maternity leave. This is 2011. It was after my second child. So I had a toddler and a young baby. And I kind of knew you and Steve Allen and Nick Lawson and Karen, you know, a lot of the senior leaders who were still in the business. And while I was on mat leave, I got a call from Nick and Karen. And you know what? I mean, for those of you who have been on maternity leave, you know, I probably wasn't in my best state. You know, coping with a baby and a toddler and just generally thinking, my God, this is just absolutely nuts. And they called me up and asked me if I wanted to come to MediaCom to run new business across the EMEA region. And I was like, what? I was due to be going back to Cara at the time in a matter of weeks, actually. So, and I didn't really know what I was going to go back to do. So it was a complete curveball, and I'd never done an international job, so I'd only ever worked in a UK role. There would be travel involved. You know, it was a new agency and a new job, but it was also running new business. So anybody who's ever worked in an agency will know that new business is not the most pedestrian role you can do. It's very fast-paced, quite stressful. So, you know, there were lots of things which made it seem like an absolutely ridiculous thing to do. But I also thought it was a brilliant idea and a massive opportunity. And, you know, I didn't really want to turn it down. So I took the job. It's turned out to be one of the best decisions I ever made, because my journey with MediaCom subsequent to that has been amazing and continues to be. So it's probably the best decision of my career, but it seemed completely nuts to do it at the time.
It must be quite scary.
Yeah, it was terrifying, absolutely terrifying. It was a complete step into the unknown. And obviously I did know some people, but you know, it was kind of crazy. But bringing it back to resilience, the reason I took this job and the reason I suppose that Nick and Karen thought I might be a good choice for it is because I'm very competitive. I love to win. And we lost the first few pitches that I led in my new role, and I don't do losing very well, and of course, you know, we just don't generally at MediaCom, and so when we lost the first few pitches, and I was like, oh my God, is it me? Should I have taken this job? Like, what have I done? You know, and I had this thing where I would take things very personally when we lost. So there was a lot of questioning about what I was doing, and I was taking things very personally. I mean, luckily then we started winning. So I think, you know, you know, for whatever reason, we started to win, which was good. But, you know, I think what I had to learn is that you cannot win everything, you know, not in this game. You can't, you know, it's very, very competitive out there. You can't win everything. And I think what I learned was that you just can't take it personally. I think I used to take things really personally. It's all my fault that we didn't win. And I would take all of that kind of responsibility. And then I learned that when we did lose, which would be inevitable in certain instances, that you learn and you move on and you apply that learning to the next one. So I think stepping into that job doing new business, losing for a few times right at the beginning of it, really made me very, very resilient. And then, you know, after that initial kind of, you know, period, we had a really fantastic, you know, run of luck in new business, and we grew the agency quite a lot across the world, and I was a part of that. So, you know, it was a great experience, but I think it's made me very resilient to be in that job, constantly pitching, inevitably losing some of the time, but also winning, you know, allows you to really build on your resilience. So
what you know, no, that's a good thing to call back on. We've had a couple of questions from the audience. Please, if you've got any more, do post them. And can I remind you to turn your camera off if you're not one of the panelists? So one of the questions is, I read an article about male-female leadership styles during COVID-19. Do you feel this is a turning point in demonstrating how a balance of typical styles is needed now more than ever? And the person that posted it, I know it's a leading question, but if you've got a thought about male-female leadership styles.
Shall I take this? I think it's interesting that both Kate and SJ have talked about, you know, that feeling of responsibility and wanting everything to be perfect and what have you. I think that's a very typical female style. And I think that if you'd have been a head of new business, a male head of new business, Kate, maybe what you'd have turned around and gone, it wouldn't have been, is it me that, you know, am I the reason why we're learning? You'd have gone, bloody stupid clients, don't know what they're doing, da, 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 da. So. And I think it's a really interesting, nuanced situation in terms of the way that these things play out. I think one of the things that this has proved to us is that people and bonds and the way that we work as teams is the most important thing, not hierarchy, not status, not positioning, you know, as in the way that you position yourself in a hierarchy or how you're perceived. It is about the work that you do and the qualities that you bring, and that's the most important thing. And I think that's a very female style of leadership rather than a very kind of alpha male style of leadership where, you know, it's quite hard to fight to the death and make key points and push other people down in meetings and make sure they don't speak if actually you can see everyone's face on the screen and you've got the ability to control it rather than have the meeting dominated by one person. So I think it's an opportunity.
I mean, I think the thing is that I think that there are leadership styles that are characterized by being masculine or feminine, but that everybody has both traits. So everybody's, men and women, have got masculine and feminine traits inside them. I don't know whether some men find it more difficult to acknowledge their feminine traits than some women do their masculine traits. I don't know what Kate, SJ, have you got any thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a really good question, and I think the only sort of nuance to it is it's about sort of masculine and feminine traits as opposed to male or female. Because I think some of my male bosses have been the most feminine in their style, but what we're definitely seeing, because I work with 4 brilliant alpha males at Saatchi, they're all amazing, and I am seeing them at their gentlest, the most vulnerable, the most empathetic. It's brilliant seeing them with their families, and I do think there is less room to, you can't hide, the kids bundle in, like all that great stuff. So we're seeing a much better form of leadership as a result of A, the pressure, and B, the exposure, and C, the stress. I think it's sort of forcing some diamonds as a result of everything. The pressure is creating diamonds.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I see leadership as male or female, honestly. I think for me, leadership is a very individual thing. It's about who you are. And I think, you know, when you're kind of, certainly for me anyway, when I was starting out, I think it took me a while to find my own style of leadership that was kind of authentically me. And I think the longer you try to be someone else, the less good you are as a leader. And I think Sarah's right about, we're seeing some very good examples of leadership. There's probably some really bad examples too. But I think certainly from my perspective, what I've tried to do is just try and be, over communicate. I think, one of the things that we've done in MediaCom that we never did before, because we're a company of 1,500 people, it's really hard to address the entire company at the same time. And we've always struggled with it, haven't we, Sue? It's like, how are we going to do it? We've literally got to hire a venue that's so massive, we can get 1,500 people in it. That's the only time we can ever communicate with the whole company. Now we can do it via a live Teams event, and we've been doing town halls every week since lockdown, and it's just been brilliant. And it's been a great opportunity. I hope the people of MediaCom would agree that we just tried to over communicate, communicate as much as we possibly can about what's happening, about the impacts on the business, about the work that we're doing for clients. And so I think what we're seeing, and so certainly that's something I've been trying to do. I don't know whether that's male or female, but I think I certainly have been trying to over communicate and just to be as open and transparent as I can about what's happening and about what the impact on the business is.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's cliches of male leadership. And actually probably a lot of the time what people mean is that kind of patriarchal alpha male leadership, which is not something that is successful at a time like this. I think that's certainly true. So if that's the question, I think that's but I know lots of men work with lots of men who would not behave like that either. So the next question we've got raised is how do you think this period of lockdown and the elevated importance of key workers, I've seen stats that NHS key workers are predominantly women, will affect gender equality when we come out to the new world? So we do know that there's a gender pay gap. We know that the results of the 2020 gender pay gap analysis were put on hold because of COVID. But we also know that there's more unpaid work at home and lots of carers are women. So do you think, as a panel, do you think that this is an opportunity for a reset, that society will reset, or are we just going to go back to the values that have created this situation?
This is a concern for me, the impact that this is having on women in particular. I mean, and I think there's quite a lot of data to support this. It's not just opinion. I think that if you look across the country, probably the world, women are being impacted, more negatively than men. And it might be because, they're a single parent, they're more likely to work in certain professions, they're more likely to have been made redundant or furloughed. But I also think there's the reality that women tend to pick up more of the domestic duties, childcare duties within a normal family, and this is a real concern for me because I do worry about the burden on women in particular. It's hard for everyone, and I don't negate that for a minute, but I do think the impact is significant on women. I read something in an article, because there's quite a bit of stuff in the press on this, and I was reading that the number of scientific academic papers submitted by women since lockdown has significantly reduced, and that the papers being submitted by male scientists has increased. And I found that deeply troubling because, there was a suggestion in this article that the reason that was happening is because women have put their careers, some women have put their careers on hold in order to kind of keep the family, the house, kind of going, and they are absorbing more of the responsibility for that, and I find that really troubling, actually.
Yeah, I mean, and we should say, because we're aware of the stats, that we understand that the disease itself is actually impacting men to a greater extent statistically than women, and that's tragic. But I hear what you're saying, that it is women that are perhaps even from our own volition picking up more, especially if there's caring involved. I mean, what do you think, Catherine? I'm very aware that one of the stories, Catherine, that you talk about, and I don't know, Kate, if you've had this experience, is that people will come up to Catherine and say to her, oh, you're CEO of a company and you're the mother of two. How on earth do you manage that? And the number of times anyone's ever said that to her husband,
Yeah.
you know, you're a CEO and a father of two, you know, how do you manage it, is zero. So there is that kind of gender difference. But what do you think?
I think Kate's completely right. I mean, there's also the issue around, you know, which is a cause close to our hearts, Sue, which is domestic violence, which is people trapped at home, you know, and if the average is 2 deaths a week, God knows what it is now. And it's also the disproportionate effect of other professions. So I've got a girlfriend from Yorkshire who runs a beauty salon. She employs predominantly women. And, you know, if the lockdown carries on, Leeds worked, that's her nickname is Leeds, Leeds worked out that if it goes much beyond July, she doesn't have a business. And she spent 20 years building that business up. And it's just that thing where she's feeling incredibly responsible. I think it's one of the key things to come out of this is to ensure that we don't, like we have done in so many that's happened in previous issues where women have taken up a level of work or caring or doing jobs and roles that may not be familiar or stretching, that we don't shift back into, you know, the new normal, which is it's the same old. And I think it's up to us to be vigilant and to, you know, make the point that people who are in caring professions are predominantly female, probably, you know, and we need to be aware of the job that they do. But I also think as well, the other interesting thing from this time, which is, you know, to Sarah's point about children running in and out, you know, most men will probably not have spent this long with their children stuck at home, you know, as opposed to being on holiday and sending them off to kids club or just going swimming or what have you for a period of time. And I think that is going to be an interesting reflex point in terms of family life, because almost certainly one of my neighbours said, I didn't realise how hard it is, you know.
So maybe some more empathy.
Yeah.
And yeah, if I could just quickly add in, I think it's a great question. I think I'd start with a negative, hope I'll get to a positive. I think change comes when there is energy and money. Fundamental change come when there is energy and money. And in truth, as a society, we're going to be distracted and poorer. For the foreseeable future. So I am really worried that so much progress that has been made, I think we're going to start going backwards, compounded with everything we've just talked about in terms of the extra pressure on women and the amount of multitasking that's going on. But I guess the flip side of this for us all to sort of carry, and certainly for me to keep as a totem, is it comes back, we can only control what we can control at the moment. And as a leader, one thing I can do is do everything I can using my little black book or my own experience to do everything I can to help the women in my agency stay powered up, whether that's running the Zoom masterclasses or coaching or mentoring. So as definitely it feels like we're going to go through a very, very challenging process in terms of equality, or challenging time in terms of equality. But I do think as leaders, but everyone can impact the people around them. So I think if we've got an account director on the call, what are you doing to look after an account manager who you know XYZ may need some extra support? So definitely challenging times, but we can all be doing something, and we can probably all be doing a bit more than we're currently doing to help other women.
And I think that leading from every seat point is a really good one. I was on a call yesterday actually with someone who just pointed out that she was in quite a traditionally led meeting, and it got to the end of the meeting and the men who'd been doing all the speaking said, right, we're done now. And she said, but shouldn't we hear from the people that haven't spoken yet? And I think, look, maybe I'm now doing the thing of characterizing people by their gender, but I think having that bravery to speak up yourself, if you're the person in the room, that's virtual room, that's noticed that, is really important. We have a question which references the book Invisible Women by Caroline Criado Perez. I know you've read it, Kate. We've all seen it. Great book and fascinating. And at one point she's discussing how the same behaviours, usage of vocabulary or traits are perceived very differently when attributed to men versus attributed to women when it comes to leadership. Is this something that you have experienced and felt? And what are your thoughts about how we can change this behaviour? I've certainly experienced that. I know you have, Kate.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't, honestly, I think it's a brilliant book, by the way. I mean, it's astonishing how, you know, the thing that struck me was that this book deals with the fact that there is just such a fundamental bias in how products are developed, you know, language is used, you know, and it's unbelievable the way that she writes about this. So if you haven't read this book, please go and read it, because it's amazing and enlightening. I mean, look, I think I've never, you know, I've just tried to be myself. I swear quite a lot, which is something that I do sometimes worry about.
There's nothing wrong with that.
And that perhaps some people might see that as unladylike, but I don't really care too much about that. And I just don't think my gender has ever been an issue for me. I've never felt that it's held me back, but I'm operating in an industry that I think is more, I mean, it's certainly not perfect, by the way, but I think it's certainly more open to female leaders and embracing of female leaders. You know, does this kind of thing happen in other categories that are, you know, significantly more? I think if I was a female politician, I wouldn't necessarily be saying the same thing. I think, you know, women politicians get a hard time. I wouldn't like to be in that context of Parliament, outnumbered by, you know, what is it, 3 to 1. You know, banking perhaps is an area where I think it's much harder for women to rise to the top. So look, I think this isn't a problem. I haven't felt it personally has held me back. So I don't think so.
Catherine?
Well, I've witnessed it, but primarily when Sue and I've been doing talks about the glass wall. I mean, we've been to organisations where it's like going back to the 1950s. It's just,
we call it travel. It's
yeah, literally is. You know, you get organisations,
yeah.
And it's and you have you know, you have women who are working in research departments at large global banks who are hosting a kind of a discussion around the research that they've done and the analysis that they've done. And when people turn up, just assume that they're there making teas and coffees, because it can't possibly be, you know, a woman. So I think that I think it depends on where you are. I think it depends. I mean, I agree. Our industry is is much more open to female leadership and to talent of all kinds. SJ might talk about something she and I are working on at the moment. And so we've witnessed it. I think it exists. I think we are in an industry that is slightly different. That doesn't mean we shouldn't do our bit to try and help, you know, both men and women who suffer from those very, very alpha male patriarchal workplaces. Because Sue and I have also had men who've gone, you know, we had one guy who said, you know, I can't take paternity leave because I may as well just put a t-shirt on that goes far me next, because it's just not accepted. Might be the law, but it isn't the way that it works here.
All of us standing up for those sorts of things.
Yeah.
SJ, did you want to talk about the thing you're working on with Catherine?
Yeah, I'm not sure I'll reference it properly. I guess it was going to be more that I've always had it a lot in my career, that I was too assertive, too angry, too aggressive, which I don't think definitely wasn't fair, and it was definitely being applied as a woman and us as a black woman. So there's always compounds it all. And I think I probably over course corrected starting at my new job, worried that was going to be how I was going to sort of imprint. And actually, I'm really lucky. I've got such a brilliant leader in Magnus who's gone, you lean in as much as you want. He can probably see me and sense me holding back. He's been brilliantly, overtly encouraging to tell me that I can get stuck in and to back myself and back my opinions and call out the bad behaviors or the wrong decisions. So I think it's a really good point. I think for most of us, there'll be times where we've been impacted by it. And I guess what I'm learning is we have to constantly be course correcting to make sure we stay true to ourselves and not to allow those labels, positive or negative, to impact on how we can operate and be our best.
I mean, I'm going to ask you one last question in a moment, but I had an interesting conversation with a woman leader about this recently, where she said that somebody had said to her that she was coming across as quite aggressive. And she started thinking about, what should she do about it? And she said, do you think they said that because I'm a woman? And I said, because I know the organisation she works in, no, I think they would have said that of a man as well. But I think that sort of did the same thing, that was kind of, very kind of direct and kind of stern. They might have said of him as well, you're being quite, aggressive. But the difference is that I think women are more likely to worry about it. So I think that would possibly be true of all of us, is that, that everybody actually these days gets criticised. The question is what do you do with that criticism?
Yeah.
Do you go into denial? Do you get really defensive? Do you double down on it? Or actually do you just go, maybe I can learn something from that and then move on a bit?
Yeah. I mean, just to add, I mean, it definitely, this is a thing. I'm not negating the fact that it definitely happens. I think what I believe is really important, and Sue and I we've been talking a lot about this, because it's important for the culture of MediaCom as well, in my view, is that if we do see this kind of behaviour, if someone is, calling out a woman for being, is criticising somebody inappropriately in any kind of situation, it's incumbent on us to call it out. And I think people are reluctant to do that. There's a whole body of academic study around groupthink and all of that, kind of people don't want to call things out. They don't want to put their head above the parapet. It's tough, but I think we have to call it out. And that's the kind of culture that I want to create in our business, is that, if we see things being said that are just deeply inappropriate, we are all empowered to call it out, and it's the right thing to do.
Now, we're coming to the close of the hour. I just wanted to ask you, really, there are a lot of people out there who are feeling that the situation is very dark. You've all talked very optimistically and positively, but there are people who have never been through this kind of thing before and are feeling that there's not much light at the end of the tunnel. What would you suggest? I mean, about how to think about it, even, physically, how best to kind of get through those darker moments. I heard someone call this situation the Corona coaster, as in like a roller coaster of emotions. And I think, if we're honest, we've all been through that, right? What would you advise?
Shall I try and answer that? I mean, look, I mean, I think we all just have to try and, get on with this as best we can. I mean, I think for people thinking that there isn't light at the end of the tunnel, I think there is. And the way that I try to look at these things is that, we will get through it. The human race has been, served up some pretty awful stuff over the history of our world, and we will get through it, and it'll be tough, and there will be casualties along the way, but we will get through it. And I think other countries are now starting to come out of lockdown, and we can see there is definitely light at the end of the tunnel. What we're all obviously desperately trying to avoid is another lockdown. And you can see, I mean, I can imagine the conversations that are happening in government at the moment. It must be so difficult to navigate those decisions, and I don't envy them. And I think, I guess I always try and look at the positives. What are the positive things that are happening? I think that we're accelerating a lot of the things that we wanted to do as a business, actually, and we'll just get that stuff done a lot quicker. So from a business perspective, whilst, there's some, tough things that we're dealing with, I think we can also start to accelerate some areas and that's really exciting. But I think in the end, and I've been saying this on the town halls, you know, we're sitting down on a video call. This has become a new normal. I think we are, you know, I'm too sedentary. I spend too much time sitting down. I think you just got to get up, walk around, get some fresh air, and just not allow everything to just, you know, to weigh too heavily on you. We've just got to, I think exercise and fresh air are probably the two most important things that we can do for ourselves right now, and be kind to ourselves.
SJ?
Yeah, actually, Kate's last point was the, I guess, was the one thing I wanted to land. And knowing this question was coming, I was very dutiful, and I went and looked at a quote because I knew I'd get the quote wrong otherwise. So Mr. Rogers is a kids' TV presenter in the US in the 60s, and he said, when I was a boy and saw scary things on the news, my mother would say, look for the helpers. You'll always find people helping. So, which I think is absolutely true, and you're going to get that sense of it's going to be okay. But this goes beyond looking for people helping, and this is me, I guess, wanting people to be more evangelical about being a helper and being kind and looking after people. And that's being kind to yourself, being kind to other people. That is finding ways to look after the juniors on your team. That is spending time working at a food bank. Like, we've got to, the more we can give back at the moment, I think the better we're going to feel, and the more in control of what's happening around us.
I think the point that I'd make is it's very easy when you're doing in your normal life to think it's just you feeling this. Actually, this is the thing that we are all going through together at the same time. And I watched a very interesting program last night called Spitfire Women, about women who delivered planes, you know, from the factories to, and they didn't have any radios and they didn't have any armor, and they had some dreadful kind of attrition rate in terms of deaths. And one of them turned around and said, yeah, it was scary and we didn't know what was going to happen next, but I look back now and it was some of the most exciting times of my life, she said, because, you know, I just felt that I was just experiencing something, and I had my comrades, you know, and we were all girls together, you know, and not saying that we're all, you know, but we are all in this together, and it is through supporting each other when you're feeling down, and putting your hand out and helping other people. And it may be people within your organisation, it might be people outside of your organisation, but we are pack animals, and pack animals work to kind of look after each other. You know, that's why we all like kind of getting together in town halls and cinemas and concerts and what have you. And we are all going through this together at different times and at different rates, but we will come through it. And then just think of how much fun it's going to be on the other side when we all get to see each other again.
It's a great
note. I'm never going to leave the cinema, frankly. I'm going to be at the Everyman in King's Cross. Come and join me, you know. All the plants were in Truro, but you know.
On that note, that unashamed plug for cinema. Listen, everyone, thank you so much for attending. Thank you to the fantastic panelists for sparing us this time and your words of wisdom. And everyone, please stay safe, stay well, look after yourselves. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, Sue.
Thank you.